Hi, I'm Dr. Rashmi Kulkarni, co-founder of Next Solutions, a microbiome-based platform that provides digital courses about the human microbiome, an app for children to learn better habits to be a healthier self. We also offer a total transformation program for health and wellness where people can improve their gut health. We do research that is again related to gut health and the human microbiome. There are many such initiatives that include outreach programs and webinars. So, we are doing something new today. We are starting our very own podcast because we want to transform lives in the way they think about nutrition, exercise, mindset, and our gut health. So, what we will do is in this series, we will try to bust many myths about all of these aspects. And we have a wonderful speaker today who is going to help us bust some of those myths. So, I have a very dear friend of mine, Swetha Sivakumar. Let's welcome her.
Hi, Rashmi.
Shweta, it's so good to see you. So, Shweta is a food columnist at Hindustan Times, and our bond goes back 23 years when we were students at the Ohio State University and roommates, very dear friends for a long time. Welcome, Shweta.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Rashmi. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and to this channel as well.
So, it's wonderful if you want to just let the viewers know about what made you enter into this field because you are an engineer. So, we would love to hear about, how you made this journey to being a food columnist.
Yes, it's a interesting one. So I graduated when I was roommates with you. You know that I studied industrial engineering and I graduated and worked as an industrial engineer for several years. But then my dad's health took a severe turn around 2008 or so. He had end-stage renal failure, and so his last few years were very difficult, and it impacted all of us as a family. And at that point, I started looking at food in a more serious way, and I decided that I wanted to pivot and do dedicate the rest of my career towards understanding food. And I look at it from a food science aspect. I wrote a blog about it for about 8 years. I still write in Substack. But then in around 2021, Hindustan Times approached me to be a food science columnist for them. And I've been writing on various topics of food science, food products, cooking techniques, and kind of opening the curtain behind the soup, the what we see in the front, and actually taking a deeper look at what is happening behind them. And so that's kind of what I do. I also post videos on my social media channels, trying to explain the concepts in Instagram and YouTube and things like that.
Yes, so I've been following those a little bit about me because it seems so complementary. So, as you know, when I was studying with you, I did my PhD in molecular genetics at the Ohio State University. And then I started focusing on cancer. I did research in cancer for several years, more than 15 years. I went to Singapore, worked here in Qatar as well, in Vale Cornell. So, after working for so many years in cancer, what I realized is that no matter what I did, it was not changing anybody's life. It was not giving me the outcome that I wanted in that research. That's why I started focusing on the root cause of disease, including cancer, which is nutrition and the gut microbiome. So that really made me focus on how it works, what are we missing in our daily diets, what are the common misconceptions we have, how can we change our gut microbiome using very very simple techniques. So these are the things that I started focusing on. That's when I met Sujata and Renuka. We founded this company. So what we are trying to do here is educate people about the gut microbiome and remove all of the misconceptions that they have when they say that, oh, I'm eating healthy, I'm exercising, then why are things not working? If they're actually doing all of those things are still not working. People are getting chronic diseases very very early in their 30s, in their 40s, which was not the case a few decades ago, 2 decades ago. But now that's on the rise. So when we talk about what you are doing and what we are doing, it is so complementary that you are showing the mechanisms of things, what happens behind the scenes, why are we doing what we are doing, what was traditionally done. So it brings a very different dimension to what we are doing. So I thought this podcast would be a wonderful opportunity to bring all of these things together.
I, I agree. It would be wonderful to explore those topics with you, and I think you and I have a lot of common knowledge base and the desire to reach out and educate other people as well, and bring them into good health.
Yes. So the first thing that I want to mention here, Shweta, because we come from a very common passion of changing how people think about nutrition in just different ways. So some examples I want to give here is that when I ask anybody about how their nutrition is, how it is related to their health or whatever, the most common thing that I hear is that, oh, I don't have any problem with my diet. I am eating a very healthy diet.
Yeah.
It is healthy. And whoever you look at, you can find so many different problems with them. So they are either eating food in the wrong way at the wrong time, in wrong combinations. So there are all of these things that we look at, and they are eating it in a way where it is very difficult to absorb things. So that's why we try to remove all of these misconceptions. And while I was doing that, I came across a blog that you had written several years ago. I remembered that. That's why I want to bring that point here. That whenever I ask people what is the healthiest thing they're eating or something, ragi is the first thing that comes to most people's minds, that, oh, I'm eating ragi, it's very healthy. So if I go back to your blog, I remember you had written about how the glycemic index of ragi changes by the way it is processed. It depends on how it is processed. So, if we want to talk about that, now I just want to let the viewers know that if you are eating ragi and you are thinking that, oh, this is very healthy, so we want to break this misconception. Firstly, we need to identify why we are eating ragi. Is it for calcium? Is it for the fiber? Is it for because you think it is low glycemic than wheat or rice or whatever? What is it for? So if you want to, elaborate on, people can eat either whole grain ragi, sprouted whole grain, or stone ground flour, finely ground flour, or sprouted ragi flour. There are these five types that I am aware of that are easily available.
Yeah. Yeah. Is very amusing to me because when we had a conversation about the podcast and you mentioned this article, and I almost had to rack my brain because I wrote this called the article blog post, I think 4 years, 5 years ago, and
Yes.
and so I went back and looked at the data myself. But you're absolutely right. So there was a study done by Sri Lankan scientists who compared the glycemic index of foods made with industrially milled ragi versus stone ground ragi. Now, stone ground, the particle sizes are much bigger, and because of that, they found a significant difference in the resulting glycemic index when they made roti. And I'll give the link so that everybody can check for themselves. But when they made roti, it was about 44, I believe, on an average, and the glycemic index, which if you know the glycemic index chart, it's 0 to 50. 55 is low, 55 to 70 is medium, and 70 and above is high. But if you use the industrially milled ragi, then it jumps to 59. So there's about 15 points difference. And the same, they also try to make a dish called pittu. It's like a steamed cake, I believe, and that went from around the mid 60s to the high 70s. So there is a significant jump in the glycemic index just based on the particle size. And you will see this concept repeated in many other grains as well. The finer you grind, the easily the body absorbs. And so as you start milling finer and finer and finer, and people want cake flour and people want, much more finely ground flour, then the glycemic index starts shooting up, which does not take away from the fact that ragi is an excellent grain and it does provide calcium. But it depends on, like you mentioned, the lens you're looking at. If you are a diabetic, then the lens you need to look at is not just the calcium levels, but also how it is impacting your blood sugar levels.
That is a very important point that you brought in. I was about to mention it, that even diabetics that I know of think that ragi is very healthy because it's a high fiber grain, and the idea of the concept of particle size is non-existent. People don't think about it at all, that it is going to change the glycemic index. It is going to change how sugar is released in their body, and it is affecting the insulin response. That is something that is not even a consideration. Just because it has a general healthy label on it, it can be consumed in any form, and they think they're going to get the same benefits out of it, which can be very, very dangerous. So the first thing that I always say about anything that people are eating, what is the objective? So even like, just like I said, Ragi as a very good example. There are many, many such examples. We can talk about many different millets in the same way. As you said, like people say that, oh, I'm eating millets. So what are millets? Which millets? Which millets are they talking about? Most people don't even know which millet they are talking about when they are saying they're eating. So it is very important to bring out these points like you mentioned, that what are the things that we are eating, what is the objective of eating, what outcome are you getting, is your glycemic index, is that affecting your health? So I think that is a very, very important point. So talking about different millets, now when people say that they are eating millets, they say that millets can be either jowar, bajra. We are not even talking about the positive, negative, or neutral millets yet. So the important thing to consider here is these have, they are seasonal. They are supposed to be eaten in a particular season. Like jowar is traditionally eaten in the summers. It has a cooling effect. That's why it is eaten in the summers. Bajra, on the other hand, has a heating effect. So it is eaten in the winters. So there are these very small examples of how just being aware of the properties of these and how we consume them can really change how our health is, how much we are getting out of it. And when we talk about millets or any of the grains, we talk about soaking. You have also mentioned that before,
Yeah.
the importance of soaking. When we soak millets, we are removing the phytates, which are not beneficial for us, which are, which actually can cause a lot of more disorders. So when we soak millets or when we use this, we also look at sproutings. Why is sprouting so important for grains? Why is soaking so important? For that is also something that you had covered quite well, and you gave a very different perspective about that. So I would definitely love to hear more about it.
Yeah, I think soaking and sprouting are looked upon as a very traditional, very outdated, very it's a chore and it's a burden. And there is some truth to it. It does take time, but there is definitely a benefit. And if you look at it, you have to kind of think of it from the plant's angle, right? So a plant does not want to be eaten like any living being on this earth. It doesn't want to be eaten, but it cannot run away from you. So it adopts defense mechanisms, and the defense mechanisms can be very simple, like very physical. It can be thorns. So if you take the example of even artichoke hearts, you have to you have to kind of almost cull away 75-80% of the plant to get to the heart, right? So those are all protection mechanisms that are designed by the plant to keep people away, to keep animals away. That's just the physical level. If you like take a look at the chemical ways that they prevent the defense mechanisms, it's even more complex. Actually, plants are wonderful chemists. They can create they create caffeine, alkaloids like caffeine, nicotine. These things are technically we love them, but it's actually meant to be an insecticide, right? They actually kill any small plants, that any small insects that will try to come at them. If you chop an onion, you cry, right? You
Yes.
Those are all actually mechanisms that the plant wants to say, hey, stop eating me, right? The mustard seeds, when you crunch into a raw mustard seed, you can actually feel yourself tearing up. Again, it's the enzymes in it, it's the chemicals in it. They are wonderful, like chemical factories almost, and they're very advanced. If you, in fact, Michael Pollan gives this very amusing example of cannabis. The weed plant, which is apparently like it's so addictive to human beings, but his hypothesis is that the plant generated those chemicals to make you forget where you actually got it from. So the next time you want to go eat it, you're actually looking turning around in circles, not able to find it. So it's
That's a good one.
yeah, we are so um, we have to be in awe of the plant's ability to prevent us from, stop us from eating them, even though they are completely immobile. The third layer of protection that they have, even after physical, even after chemical, is the enzymatic. And so, what that level is if you eat it, it's like, yes, you may eat me, but I'm still going to not give up without a fight, right? So it's going to go inside your stomach and your intestines and be like, I'm not going to give up all my nutrients. You know what? You wanted the starch, you wanted the minerals from me. I'm not going to give it, right? So part of the way we extract that is by cooking. That is one aspect, right? But it doesn't inhibit all of them. So there are three enzyme inhibitors, most very popular ones. One is trypsin inhibitor, then there is tannins, and there is phytates, or the phytic acid. And so all of them have a different impact in preventing us from absorbing the nutrients. And trypsin inhibitor, for example, you can eliminate most of it by cooking, but the other two are quite hard to eliminate just by cooking alone. But when you soak them, what you're happening is you're lulling the plant into a sense of security, because now it's thinking the rain has come. Now it's about time for me to, the seed or the legume or the grain to sprout into a new plant. And it itself has those enzymes, because it created those enzymes. It knows how to withdraw those enzymes. So it creates the next set of enzymes to digest them and to kind of start growing the sprouting the new plant. And at that point, if you eat them, then you are actually you're eating at them at their most vulnerable, which is our most beneficial. And so you are not fighting, your stomach is not fighting against those enzyme inhibitors that the plant is releasing. The One of the studies found that soaking inhibits phytic acid levels by around 50% for lentils and chickpeas, which is a huge amount. If you think of it, just as 4 to 6 hours soak is not just going to make it much more easily digestible, but it's also going to eliminate these anti-nutrient factors and help your body absorb the nutrition much better.
That was a wonderful explanation. I'm sure people have realized so many things in it, that these are the secrets as to why we don't get the benefits from the same food that we eat. That if I am eating chickpeas just without soaking, I'm cooking them, I'm not getting any nutrition out of it. You are eating it after soaking or even sprouting, you're getting a lot more out of it. So, this is one thing that I really wanted to bring out. Thank you so much for that. That how we eat the food, that just by saying that, oh, I'm getting enough protein, I'm getting enough this phytic acid, as you said, phytates, anti-nutrients, this is why we soak millets not for half an hour, not for 1 hour, it is soaked for 6 to 7 hours or even overnight to get rid of those phytates. And then we cook them so that it becomes a lot more bioavailable, because the plants, as you said rightly, are not ready to give up their nutrition, the nutrition that they have. And this is something that people don't know, or they don't want to think about it. And the defense mechanisms that you talked about, yes, we might learn about all of them in school, but when we are cooking, none of that ever comes to our mind, that we are cooking something that was also living. It has all of these defense mechanisms, we need to think about them. We always hear that, sprouts are very healthy and we should eat something. So it almost seems like people think of it as a bonus, so they are already getting nutrition, and then sprouts are a bonus. If I use sprouting, I will get additional benefits. It's not like that. We actually need to sprout all of this to get even the normal nutrition that we want. This is a big reason why our nutritional status is so poor.
Yeah, I think part of it is because we get the macronutrients by the cooking process. So, for example, starch in by itself, if you take a raw rice grain and you try to eat it, you're not going to get any benefit out of it. It's going to give you a tummy ache. It's not You're not going to extract any energy out of it. It's because it's very inert. Again, the same thing. The plant does not want to give up. It's hard. It has used photosynthesis. It has, changed the glucose into a starch. It has worked very hard to make that starch. But for us, we cook it. That's why human beings cook the starches. We cook our rice. We cook our atta, rotis. That is great for the micronutrients, but sorry, the macronutrients. But when you get into the other aspects, like you bind your iron that is bound to the other, it's bound to the grain or calcium and things like that. That's when you start looking at not just plain cooking, but you also look at other mechanisms with which you can gain the maximum out of eating that particular plant.
So very important point, like you said, iron. In order to release iron, the non-heme iron from dals, you add something that has vitamin C in it, so that it is more bioavailable. So if we want to make things bioavailable like this, sprouting is a very good way of doing it, and it is done to get normal nutrition, not for the bonus. And there is one more aspect, that when we are talking about millets and anything else, millets are also, there's a lot of fermentation that is done with millet flowers, or so what the reason for fermentation is also very interesting. That is another misconception that people have. So if we talk about fermented food, people think that, oh, they are probiotic foods and we are getting probably live germs out of it, and they are talking about idli and dosa and dhokla. But the thing they fail to consider here is that these fermented foods are cooked, they are not getting anything live out of it, live germs. But it is still very beneficial to eat them because they have postbiotics. That's what we always say, that the metabolites from the microorganisms, because they are pre-digesting the food. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, it's interesting because we do not the phytase enzyme, but the bacteria, the lactic acid bacteria that makes the idli batter sour, or that makes the dahi, or makes the dokla, is actually contains that enzyme which can then break down. So the same study that I told you, that sprouting reduces phytic acid by 50%, it found that fermentation is reduced by 77%. So fermentation is one step even more, because you've already done soaking before the fermentation, and now you have also then fermented. Now when you ferment something, what you're doing is basically allowing, so you're taking this raw starch grain. Like I told you, the raw starch grain is not easily accessible to anybody. Like you cannot eat the raw starch grain. But when we make our idlis and make our dosas, we actually create an environment where the enzymes in the grain, or with the assistance of another, like urad dal or fenugreek seeds added to it, releases the starch breaking down enzyme and then makes it into sugars. The lactic acid bacteria, which is present in the air, then starts breaking down those sugars and into the smaller, it eats it and then makes it sour, makes it gives out lactic acid, and it makes the batter sour, which again drops the pH, which in itself is great for absorbing the nutrients, because a lower, it's more, when it's more acidic, you can actually absorb more iron. But not just that, they're also using the enzymes that they have, which human beings don't have, but certain, in, for example, cows and things, they have these bacteria in their gut, the way they can chew and they can bring it out and still digest the grass and cellulose, is because they have the gut bacteria, which is a different mechanism. But we are now performing an identical task outside our body, right? Like we're using the fermentation process to replicate that. And now once it's all broken down, we pour it into a steamer and then we steam it. Now the starches, whatever remaining starches, are converted into food for us. Plus, like you said, the metabolite, the breakdown of all the other things makes that food much more easy to digest. And so you can give an idli to a 90-year-old man or a 1-year-old child, and they should be able to digest it, because it is literally being broken down by an organism which is outside your body, right? So, and I like the process of fermentation. I like to think of it as how we are a part of an ecosystem. Like you talk about the ecosystem inside our gut, we are actually using something that is outside in every surface, and we are giving it time to work upon our foods, and then we are eating that. So I think it's such a, even though how advanced we humans get, it's a good reminder that we still are living in an ecosystem, and we benefit from feeding that bacteria or yeast in the case of bread, and then consuming whatever they have, after they have multiplied and given up.
So those were very, very important points that you brought in, Shweta. We always talk about the gut microbiome and how it is our invisible organ and it is helping us digest our food. So when we talk about fermented foods, it is pre-digested for us, just like you said, by the germs, by the microorganisms that are present in these foods. So very important points. When we talk about idli and dosa, we are not getting those live microorganisms, but there are other fermented foods that are not cooked, like kanji. It is a wonderful winter drink that is made with black carrots or beetroots. So what happens here in any of these, like even yogurt or kimchi, sauerkraut, any of these fermented foods, the foods are pre-digested for you. The nutrients are made bioavailable to you by these wonderful microorganisms. And when you consume those fermented foods, you are also getting a bonus of those microorganisms which colonize your gut. So there are two different things here: eating fermented foods that are cooked versus and uncooked. So they are going to provide these wonderful nutrients that we cannot digest, or they are not available to us directly from the food. So there is something intermediate that is happening. So fermentation is something that we very highly recommend to people,
Yeah.
and it is so amazing how they transform what we can get from the same foods. Eating a beetroot just by itself, cooking it or fermenting it, it brings out so many different nutrients by doing following all of these processes, and we have been doing those traditionally for centuries.
Yeah.
We just have to go back to our roots. So it is wonderful if we bring back all of these dimensions, think about how we are eating our food. And just like you brought in these very, very different dimensions, I'm glad we talked about all three aspects. Like ragi, we have to consider the particle size. What is the objective of eating a particular food? Do I want calcium out of it? Can I afford a high glycemic food? That is something that I absolutely need to consider when I make that choice about ragi or anything else. When we talk about sprouting, it is a basic thing that we need to do to break down the defense mechanisms of the plant and make those nutrients bioavailable for us. The third thing that you mentioned about fermentation, it is such an amazing process that humans have been using for several centuries now, with the help of these wonderful bacteria, yeast, all of the other microorganisms that help us pre-digest the food for us, and they help colonize our gut as well if we are eating live probiotic foods like this. So those were some really, really amazing aspects that you brought in. If people just follow these secrets that they might have learned today from this podcast, what an amazing transformation we'll have in health, because we just need our cells to have the right nutrients. That's all they need. There are chemical reactions that are happening in our bodies. If we fuel them with the right nutrients or reagents, why won't they function properly? Why should we have diseases if we get all of these? So that was a lovely, lovely perspective that we got on all three topics as usual. This is what we do in the company. We want to bring such amazing aspects. I'm sure we will have many more with Shweta. So it was wonderful having you today. And I think we had lovely insights on all three of these. So
Yeah.
I hope people make better choices about their nutrition after listening to this.
Well, thank you so much, Rashmi, for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure to always spend time with you, and also to it's an honor to be on this podcast. So anytime you want, I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shweta. Have a lovely day, all of you viewers.
Thank you.
So much. I hope you learned a lot about what you might be missing out on, the key nutrients, what you can do to improve the nutrition from the same food that you are eating. Do let us know in the comment box if there are any burning issues you would like to hear about, any interesting topics, any interesting speakers that we can bring to this very podcast series, the number one microbiome podcast. So we are going to post our Instagram, our social media handles. They are Microbiome Superhero. Also, do check out Shweta's handles. They are Upgrade My Food or Swetha Sivakumar on YouTube. And all of the links are in the description below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you in the next one.